And right, we're running towards the end of the morning. And I wish to say a few words in order to introduce Enrico Ferraris, who's a member of the Museo Egizio of Turin. I start by the consideration that I gather from today's papers that we're all very much aware of the fact that, I mean, there's a phrase that I used to say to my students here, and it's archaeologists are above all historians. This is technical issues, but I've seen throughout the morning that no one of us is, leaving aside the historical meaning of what we find, and that these are elaborated tools which help us in order to reconstruct history. This is much clear to any one of us. And on the other hand, no one has ever blamed astronomists because their tools were improving and made research more and more precise and accurate. So why should we bother? I'm just saying this because actually in the last years in Turin at the Museo Egizio, I've seen a sort of revolution. And this revolution has actually one name. The propeller of the revolution has been my friend and colleague, Cristian Greco. Just to mention one thing that he did in a museum, which was very much into, I would call them 19th century standards. He made a new setting of the whole thing, and one of the galleries was entitled the Gallery of Material Culture, which is a real revolution, as much as for the museum, as much as for Egyptology. And actually, Christian is quite aware of the historical meaning of archaeology, and he's been organizing congresses. I also had the honor to participate to one catalog of one of the exhibitions, Archeologia dell'Invisibile, the Archaeology of the Invisible. And in that Congress, one of the guests was actually Maurizio Ferraris, which I don't know if you're related to. Okay, I always wondered. And Maurizio Ferraris, actually, we tried to have him here. He was busy, he couldn't come, but he's very much into things like those that Tyler and also Giacomo and Cristiano said, the accumulation of data and the thing that we all know that. We all know that we have, thousands of pictures in our phone, in our cell phones, and we never look at them. And so this is one of the risks, but the advantages are very clear for what we've seen today. And I'm claiming that Cristian Greco is much into the historical significance of archaeology, also because I was happy and lucky in the very last weeks to witness, and Enrico was there as well, a wonderful dialogue in the Teatro Carignano of Turin between him and the Nobel Prize for Literature, Orhan Pamuk, who wrote a marvelous book about objects and who actually put up a museum in his house full of his objects. So conversing with objects in the post-digital age is the title of Enrico Ferraris' paper, and the Museo Egizio is the case study. So I'm really eager to listen to you, Enrico. Your turn. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And actually, I know that my talk today is a little bit on a borderline if we confront with digital archaeology in general, because I am about to speak about artifacts, and especially what attracted me about the title of this workshop was the idea of reshape practices through digital strategies. because it's exactly what happened, and it is happening actually in Museo Egizio since 2015 when we opened a new permanent exhibition. But at the same time, we launch some research lines in different topics. That is, yeah, basically, two of them are on the DNA of Museo Egizio, and they are actually the main strategies we organize the new permanent exhibition that is the archive and the archaeology. So at the same time in the Museo Egizio, the permanent exhibition, we tried to speak about not only the ancient Egypt through the collection, but also the wonderful, very important scientific journey of Museo Egizio starting from 20th century. So the research lines that we decided to open at that time was about recover the history of the excavation. That means digital reproduction, digital scan of all the glass plates we collected at that time. So more than 4,000 glass plates about the excavation, 20 years of excavation of Museo Egizio in Egypt. To be back in Egypt to excavate. And thanks to Christian, that was the vice director of Saqqara excavation in the Leiden Museum, we inherited this possibility and to be back in Egypt after 25 years. But the third one, the third research line was a completely brand new one in our experience, that was archaeometry. And was absolutely coincidental that we started to look at this possibility to study the artifacts through the natural sciences approach and the tools, cutting-edge instruments. And the story I would like to share today is exactly this 10 years path. Not only it's an history, but it's for us very interesting to share with all of you this approach, because background, but as a curator, it changed completely our way to study and to storytell the object. And if archaeometry played this type of role, the digital environment gave shape and gave imaging and new tools to deliver these two tasks. So archaeometry came in the Museo Egizio through actually the Vatican Coffin project, that is an international program of archaeometry focused on the study of yellow coffin during the period, developing a paradigm and new protocols of diagnostic studies. So thanks to that just initiation, we opened in 2017 the TT8 project. TT8 stands from Theban Tomb 8, that basically is the tomb of kind merit in the Deir Medina necropolis, 18th dynasty, so more or less 1500 BC. In 1906, Museo Egizio was excavating the Deir Medina village, and Schiaparelli, the director of the expedition, discovered a complete intact tomb of a private that is absolutely almost a unique in Egypt. So basically more than 160 objects with a variety of material classes and object classes available to be studied. Yeah, here we go. These the pictures are taken exactly at that time with the high-tech camera they had at that time. And so all the objects in situ and the possibility, especially to look for the first time at a private ready goods completely on site, in situ, and with a variety of materialities. Yeah, and this is so basically the two coffins, two main coffins of the two owners. By the way, Ka was the chief of the workers in Deir Medina. That means that he was the chief leading the process of construction and decoration of the tombs of the kings of his time in the King's Valley. So he's not an aristocrat. He's not so involved in the power languages. He's a private. He's at the top of his community, but he's a private. And probably this is so helpful in terms of the study of materialities, because here we have objects prepared for the funeral, but also, and most of them are from daily life. And this is absolutely unique. So after 3 days of documentation, 3 days, we know, because they were afraid of the risk to have spreading out voice about this discovery. They just very quickly get out with all the objects in Cairo, and then in Turin, they moved in Turin. And that's why the collection is there now. So the problem that we faced in 2015 is that the only report about the discovery are very concise, but still a scientific report about the discovery, is not from Schiaparelli, but Somers Clark, that was from the Society of Antiquaries of London, that was on site and was collecting information. And we have to wait 1927 to have a report that is not a full study of the discovery from Schiaparelli. So it was inevitable to think that one of the most important parts of the Egyptian Museo Egizio collection, that is the tomb of Ka and Merit, needed to have a full study implementing different perspectives, not only the archaeological one, because one of the other things so important about this tomb is that it's perfectly dated because of the cartouche that are on most of the objects. So we precisely know where is from this collection, and especially the date. So that's why Tomb of Ka is considered in Egyptological studies a point of reference in history, for instance, in history of art, in history of production, because there's a plentiness of materialities and the type of objects that can be a point of reference for all the other objects sometimes discovered or maybe present in other collections without any information about the provenance. So, by the way, we launched the project about the full study of these grave goods, collecting a lot of colleagues from the Egyptological study, but forceful to collecting also many scholars from other disciplines, especially from the natural sciences aspects, in order to study not only the materiality, but also the importance of the collection for the Egyptological, properly said, studies. And if you are just interested on our website, you can have free access to these proceedings of the Medina through the kaleidoscope that we had in 2018, and there's the description of the project. By the way, it's not only a matter of artifacts, because if we want to have a holistic perspective of this process, we need also to take in consideration the archaeological field, and so meaning the tomb and the funerary chapel that is still absolutely accessible and in the Medina. So for this reason, 3 years ago, we started a full photogrammetric campaign in order to have a sort of a digital anastilosis, starting from the funerary chapel, and then the tomb, that is actually the most problematic part of the study, because the underground tomb is not so stable, so we have to wait a bit. So just to share some shots about the work we are doing now about that. And basically, just yesterday we completed the photogrammetric campaign in Louvre, because the pyramidion that was on the top of the funerary chapel is there. And this is another story. Yes, obviously, it's quite important for us to implement the archives and so the data legacy. Unfortunately, 3 days of documentation is not so much, and that's why we are facing a lot of problem in filling the gaps. But still, this is a part of the study that we are performing now, thanks to two colleagues in Museo Egizio that are entrusted with the archives and the digitization of that. And yes, obviously, we started a very important archaeometric program that we are developing in several years, actually, and what's especially starting from the macroscopic vision of the object to the invisible ones, the invisible layers. That means that depending on the materialities, so we have textiles, human remains, metals, woods, vegetable flora remains, and food remains, just to mention some of them. Obviously, we have to find a way to fix some different protocol, because actually it's the first time in my knowledge that are so complicated, and this complexity is studied on a wall and with this archaeometric approach. That means that there are not some protocols that we can, in a diagnostic order, I mean, that we can just follow because some others already done this type of work. So it was interesting and very fruitful for the Museo Egizio to approach the problem starting from the logistic point of view, because it means that you have to host sometimes teams working with very important instruments like the XRF mapping that needs some preparation and tools to be mounted on the room and the showcase in the museum. To actually the way we can deliver, okay, this tool is working on these layers, then we can add this information thanks to this other technical approach, and so and so. And this for all the materialities. We presented in the International Symposium of Archaeometry 2022 the project, especially delivering the idea that this is a new way to develop for a museum, I mean, to develop a partnership, but at the same time, a new way to study the collection and to also imagine how to deliver and the outcome of this work. And this is just agreed with the different type of analysis we performed. And as you can see, so starting from the imaging techniques and to the non-invasive and invasive spot analysis, that, as you can see, are not usable for all the objects without any distinction, but we tried to fix some protocols. Thanks to the critical mass of all these studies and data, we started, let me say, we started to shift a bit in respect also what we can disseminate in the Museo Egizio, because we find out so many information that were not available just reading the hieroglyphs or interpreting the images, the depictions on the objects, that started in our head the possibility to share with the visitors, so that there were also this layer, and that the artifacts could be more than just a beautiful object in a showcase. And another topic so important for us, starting from 2015, was exactly the idea that a collection like that is not just a matter for archaeologists or Egyptologists, but now complexity needs to be studied and to be faced through a multidisciplinary approach. And natural sciences actually were our first real big partner in that. So in 2019, we opened an exhibition titled Invisible Archaeology. And basically, the idea beside this this exhibition was not to speak about ancient Egypt, but how a museum is studying a collection. And especially the problem was not to be just a festival of science, but to propose an exhibition delivering a new message the museum was thinking about. And this message was exactly the idea of the complexity of an object, and the idea that depending on the technologies we have, we can enter in a conversation with an object, and some information that are available they are already present in the materiality. But what is changing is our capability to interrogate the object in the best way. That means that the object can transverse, can go through the time, and through generation, new generation will have new tools, new way, new approach, new methodology to interrogate the object, exactly like we are doing now respect Schiaparelli's time. So the problem here was then a museological one. I mean, and this is where digital environment was absolutely fundamental and critical. Because in order not to be boring or too academic, we needed to have some museographic tools completely new. And yeah, I remember I wrote a very, very short text because they weren't so useful for the purposes we had at that time, but we developed a lot of visual design processes. The exhibition was, the temporary exhibition was one of the most successful in these 10 years. And I'm highlighting this only to say that the visitors were very, very prepared to receive that message. Sometimes in a museum, we are afraid, in the museological domain, we are afraid that if you are not, how to put this, if you are not compelling, you are not meeting the expectation of the visitors, you fail. You will fail in terms of a number of visitors, and probably also that there is also this wrong idea that you are also failing in being relevant. Like how to be relevant depend on how the expectation of the visitors are satisfied. But this is not the case. So the idea was, okay, let's try. And this is another way why it's so important to have a management in our museum that is so available to fail if there is this risk, but in order to gain new knowledge. So we tried something new, and we developed this exhibition. Basically, the idea was to develop a path about the biography of the object, because we intended that if we spend more time through archaeometry to develop a knowledge not on one object representative of all the system of production in cultural materiality in ancient Egypt, but exactly on the history of that object. This is what happened when you use archaeometry on an object. So you can have just a drawing of a human skeleton, but this is just a general representation of something that is common to all of us. But another aspect is when you have an X-ray or someone telling you about his history. So broken arms, if she had a baby or something like that. And it was exactly this the key to enter the mind of our visitors, through humanizing the objects. And when using the idea of the biography of an object. So this humanization of the object was exactly what helped us to deliver and to engage the visitors with the idea that there's a material thing that is going to time, exactly like we are doing, with a specific history that thanks to the natural sciences and the growing collaboration through Egyptology and natural sciences, we are now growing up this possibility to handle to look through the object and see other invisible aspects, and that's why the title Invisible Archaeology. So basically, yeah, the biography of object was fundamental. We introduced the idea that an object can have a sort of a first life that is connected with the production of the object, the use, reuse, and the abandon of the object. And this is what happened at the time in the first life. Then there's a sort of a second life, actually can have also a third, fourth, and so on. But a second life is when the object is discovered on an archaeological context, because immediately it changes the status from just a common object, and if we speak about just daily life object, but it starts also a new role, because it's that is not connected with the function of the object, but it is connected to the agency that the object now in the contemporary times can deliver and can acquire, like layers and layers and layers. And then obviously through the discovery it acquires a new value and also an economic value, and obviously the process in the museum is to preserve all these layers. So basically the invisible archaeology, in order to deliver this idea, we develop the possibility for the visitors to feel that we were not speaking about academia, just starting the exhibition with some contemporary objects, because what we were describing was not connected with ancient object only. It's every object created by human civilization. So we divided and we presented at the entrance of the rooms contemporary objects belonging to the members of Museo Egizio, divided in at least the three main aspects. So object that preserve, lose, or pass on upon. So object belonging to the family by generation, like for instance this watch that is a serial product from factory, but it immediately changed the status like a micro document with a micro story thanks to the old information that can be put on during the use. Object that changed to adapt to the passage of time. So the object can also maintain shape and function, just like in this case we have oil lamp, electric lamp. Sometimes it changes the function, not so much maybe the shape, like the case by from cannons of Italian Second World War. And sometimes they can change completely shape and function, like in this case with this toy. But still, we can reconstruct the first life thanks to the writings. So another way to engage the visitors with the idea that there's a chance to look through an object and have more information. The third aspect was that the object that become artifacts. And this is absolutely under the eyes of all our contemporary visitors. So vinyl, music cassette, video game table, video game of the 80s, that now are present, by the way, in the museums devoted to the history of game. Yeah, obviously, this was the first part of the exhibition, introducing the visitors with the idea that what we were speaking about is a sort of archaeology of us. And this is the title we used in a publication of 2 years ago from Conversing Institute of UCLA, Archaeology Outside the Box, just if you are interested in this topic. So just a quick view to the exhibition. It's a path. The claim was this one. So from the visible domain to the invisible one and back again. So we started from the visible domain, like a sort of a journey of the object. So starting from obviously the archaeology, and so we delivered these two 7 meters long wall projection, the glass plates, so the way with camera, Schiaparelli acquired information about on the archaeological side, and on the other one, the development of the same technique in, yeah, this is on the camera. And by the way, 3D immersive experience were already present at that time. If we consider that with the stereotype photography developed at the time of Schiaparelli, they tried to have exactly, thanks to a tool in which you could pose the photographs, you can have a three-dimensional immersion feeling. And yes, the development of photography in photogrammetry. And here we introduce the visitors with the idea that there's a development of techniques, and that now digital environment can also develop something more about how we study the object, because all these objects now, from the excavation of Saqqara, for instance, are on the store in Egypt, and we had no possibility to have this object here. But at the same time, digital environments make every object available to all simultaneously, and with the possibility to attach information on the 3D model. But this is your topic. The invisible domain, the archaeometry. So we confront the visitors with the idea that, for instance, the most immediate evidence is the colors. So we show let's say that through the invisible domains of the archaeometry, we are investigating the first life of the object. And thanks to that, so we started with the colors, the pigments, and starting from the raw materials, the binders, in order to transform pigments in color. And here we had a sort of a break in the history of the object, speaking about Egyptian blue. Because the Egyptian blue, studied by Erwin Masic from MIT, Laboratory for Multi-Scale Characterization and Material Design, is actually studying ancient material that can provide, that can demonstrate useful for contemporary use. Especially Egyptian blue is one of the demonstrations that the know-how about how transform materialities and the knowledge we actually acquired in the past can be relevant also for the development of technologies today, like, for instance, for monitoring fingerprints, to prepare medical prostheses like that, increasing the efficiency of some panels. And this for us was absolutely gold, because we were demonstrating that we were speaking about something that is not just relegated in the past, but is very connected with our needs. And so thanks to, yeah, these are some of the videos we produced. And in the case of the pigments, we tried to show the bar, upper part of the screen, the electromagnetic field and the possibility of changing the frequency of your detector. So starting from the infrared to ultraviolet and so, and the X-rays and so, to look to different layers of information. And this was starting from the macroscopic to the invisible and the microscopic, let's say. So in the infrared, we show the people, our visitors, what we can detect, for instance, change of minds of the artisan. Another aspect so intriguing was to share with the visitors the idea that the museum is also working on non-invasive, more and more non-invasive and non-destructive analysis, like, for instance, in detecting Egyptian blue, thanks to a specific short range of the infrared, where we can now BIL detect Egyptian blue just with a processor on a camera, and not through the destructive analysis that we were forced to do 10 years ago, for instance. In the ultraviolet, what the black wigs can be absolutely black, naked eye, change completely in a grayish one on the two guys on the right and on the left. So we use XRF mapping in order to understand that from the chemical point of view what was changing. And so we involve the visitors in this process of investigation. in order to establish, for instance, that behind the chemical reaction that we were detecting in ultraviolet, there was probably a brush of black that was still dirty of the Egyptian blue. And this was actually a completely serendipity discovery that we made during the study of the tumor car. In the green, you can see a second black the artisan used, and it's a second black based on manganite. So he used an organic black and an inorganic black, as you can see, for a specific purpose. So very tiny lines, dots, hieroglyphs, when for the big, weak, and so use our organic ones. This is not present in scientific literature because there were no possibility in the past in Egypt, especially in Egypt, and nowadays, to use this type of tools. So increasing this possibility, now we are looking at the object and we look through the object saying and staring to the gesture of the artisan. And this opened completely new trend. Okay, going to the end, we continue also from how digital environment can help in ethical approach in the study of human remains. So in 1908, it was a still standard way to study the mummies, unwrapping them, destroying them. And now, obviously, we have the digital unwrapping that, by the way, it's not just a way to look at bones, but thanks to the radio density factor, and through the CT scan, we can also detect and identify, characterize some metals like gold, silver, and aluminum, and it makes some hypotheses about, in the blue one, blue color of stones. And so we make also some 3D printing of this the jewelry of kind merit in order to show that this is a new possibility. Finally, in the third part of the exhibition, we started to speak about the feedback on visible domain. So how we use this data. It's not just a matter of historical reconstruction, it's the data so useful for the conservation activities. So we just presented the 3 case studies about mural paintings, the papyri, and the textiles. But the final room was the only one without any object. It was a normal sized 3D printing of a coffin. We studied, and with a mapping projection, and 2 projections on the side, we tried to involve the visitors with the idea of, okay, let's visualize this biography. And thanks to that, we had the opportunity to transport for an instant an object in a sort of a database in the feeling of our visitors, because we were describing in a sort of a very vital, lively way how a coffin like this one was prepared, decorated, and so thanks to all the information we collected through the archimetric analysis. So basically, it was very important also to share the idea that research is not just a matter of instruments, but a human being and researcher. By the way, if you are interested to look at this temporary exhibition, it's still available as a digital twin on our website. And I guess that's all. Thank you so much.